The following account was recovered from a sealed records envelope, marked simply as case. #29H. Documentation appears to originate from somewhere north of the original rail lines, referred to in all available notes as the Old Northbound Rail Spur. Materials consist of incomplete dispatch logs, faded photographs, personal notebooks for official reports, and a series of confidential memoranda. The contents display stamps and codes known to have been used by local bodies, yet nearly all direct place names are either redacted or missing altogether. What stands out most is the atmosphere enveloping the file. Many entries are dated during the period of recurring freeze, when daylight rarely breached the cloud cover, and temperatures left the abandoned rails encased in ice for months at a time. Throughout the pages, reference is made to a cluster of incidents along the spur, details captured only piecemeal, as if each report was written in forced isolation, its author uncertain or unwilling to confirm ordinary facts. The opening memorandum presents itself in careful, deliberate language. Subject is presence along remote northbound sections. Environmental context: extensive forest, severe cold, long stretches of unmaintained track. Administrators advised: irregular intercepts deployed. Processing these lines, it becomes clear that what was being investigated was not a singular event, but a series of occurrences, layered by the passage of time and paralleled by mounting psychological tension. The tone remains almost clinical, yet the terse reports suggest an underlying dread. The remainder of the opening file is a map, drawn by hand, with certain locations marked only as sighting point, west-facing cabin, and Otley, persistent shadow, 214. No legends accompany these marks. The map itself is heavily creased. Several portions are smeared with graphite, others marked out entirely with a black wax pencil. A paragraph at the bottom reads, "Records incomplete. Follow with caution. Final entry uncertain." No signatures appear. Disjointed evidence continues. Photographs of snow-covered rails with indistinct figures in the distance. Lists of names each crossed out with different colored ink. A fragment from a local broadcast noting transmissions irregular. Cabin lights seen where none exist on grid. The documents carry the weight of delayed reporting, as if subject to scrutiny from someone unaccustomed to filing cases ex post facto. The location recurs in nearly every entry, a vast, wintry expanse bordered by black spruce, their uppermost boughs bent beneath ice. Here, the Old Northbound Rail Spur meanders through miles of blizzard-broken hinterland, crossing frozen lakes and dipping into valleys where the snow collects in silent heaps. No two descriptions entirely match, though common threads persist. The rails themselves run isolated, with no traffic for 10 years by one estimate, and only the occasional maintenance shed stands as testament to prior human presence. One team member, in an unattributed journal, wrote of the old spur as an arterial corridor for silence, a geography stripped near bare, except for what waits in the woods and the constant oppression of wind on steel. This sentiment echoes throughout the file. Topographic records draw a line across unbroken forest, pass ice-clad causeways, and stop abruptly at a crossing called only Western Junction. From there, the rails splinter, running parallel to a ridgeline where snowfall gathers unchecked. Just beyond the ridgeline sits a series of cabins. Their provenance is disputed in the file. One search report lists them as formerly inhabited by spur employees, now abandoned since last freeze. Another record claims presence detected. Window lights at 2 o'clock, cabin unlocked, no evidence of occupancy. The confusion in these entries heightens the sense of isolation. Investigators sent to the cabins recorded intermittent radio signals. Voices carried over non-functional intercom. Persistent cold inside rooms regardless of heat source. These anomalies remain without conclusion. The daylight here is brief and reproducibly blue in tone. Each sunrise is described as muted and insufficient. The northern winds work their way through broken rail ties, producing a sound variously noted as a low whistle or shifting groan. Tree lines buckle under snow weight, forming angular shadows that bisect the spur at unpredictable intervals. In several photographs, these shadows run parallel to the rails for miles before vanishing into the firs. Climate details appear in dispatch logs. Average temperatures hover below -40 for most of the season. Blizzards frequently obscure the spur, rendering even the most obvious landmarks indistinct. Yet it is in these indistinct conditions that most sightings are referenced. Figures glimpsed between the trees. Indistinct movement at the edge of visibility. Patches of darkness described as too persistent for mere shadow. Investigators catalogued their locations methodically, marking each observation in relation to sighting point on the crumpled map. No precise location is ever given for sighting point. Instead, each entry references coordinates that never align with any known survey marker. The result is a feeling of perpetual search. The records themselves seem to wander, mimicking the geography they describe. Several other environmental factors are meticulously recorded. Auroras occasionally flicker overhead, providing brief illumination. River crossings flood intermittently, with ice slabs shattering the silence. Moose and wolf tracks are common, yet several reports note animal silence preceding incident at cabin. Whether this silence denotes presence or mere coincidence remains unaddressed in the official findings. The recurring theme in all setting descriptions is ambiguity. The first documented incident is marked only by time and place, 2:14, near the central junction of the spur. One report, faded by apparent water damage, lists the following: unidentified movement. Black shapes reported along the eastern track body. Duration 94 seconds. No evidence found on later search. The rest is redacted. Yet, this time the time most frequently appearing in log serves as anchor for the rest of the investigation. The lead-up to the incident remains piecemeal. Several unrelated transmissions reference a persistent sensation reported by those working the rails. Uncomfortable pressure. Air temperature dropped rapidly. Field teams separated. In handwritten records, this sensation is explained as an acute awareness of presence, both within and beyond visible range. This psychological notation is supported by equipment logs, which show interference pulses and abrupt power failures in handheld devices. Shortly thereafter, a sequence of anomalies is recorded across multiple witness accounts. The most recurring description focuses on the rail tracks themselves. Lights unfixed in the fog, tracks split as seen from high vantage, figures motionless along sleepers. Notably, all photographic evidence from that night arrives blurred or blank. Mechanical malfunction is cited, but no technical explanation stands. One investigator's notebook insists, film exposed fully to residual cold. Figures vanished on developing. Suspicion of equipment sabotage is voiced, but dismissed in later pages. The air of uncertainty deepens. Further incidents continue, always near to 14. Always within the stretch marked as the sighting point. Several logs report shadow convergence, a phrase used to describe sections of track overtaken by sprawling patches of blackness, defying regular explanation of snow shadowing. Witness summaries mention motion without source. Cold increased, speech difficult. A dispatch note marked urgent adds, team cohesion lost. Recovered member unable to recall previous hour. At the old cabin, intermittent light was observed flickering beyond the windows. Despite the absence of electrical power for nearly a decade, a packet of photographs later appended to the file show only indistinct swaths of darkness, flecks of snow, and a single unidentifiable silhouette standing just inside the cabin doorway. By morning, reports of physical disarray were logged, tools missing, tracks disrupted, local wildlife absent. The team's subsequent search of the spur led to more ambiguous discoveries. In the records, footprints diverge, no common origin, appear and disappear within 40 meters. All snow surfaces reset by wind. One team member, in her final log entry, claimed unable to recall departure, arrival. Sensation persists. The investigation launched following the 2:14 incidents moved in careful, cautious waves, hampered by relentless storms and the pervasive cold. Authority over the inquiry shifted several times, with command notes reflecting deep uncertainty about both purpose and means. The earliest investigative stage focused almost exclusively on physical evidence footprints. Residual thermal marks, cabin entries, but every trail led to contradictions. Initial forensic notes catalogue a variety of inconclusive findings. The tracks discovered along the rails appeared unusually deep. Composition inconsistent with standard gait. Stride length varies. Detailed measurements were taken. Yet, as frozen winds swept through the spur overnight, all physical traces vanished. Photographic negatives, hundreds collected by deployed investigators, returned blank, or so faint as to be unprintable. Digital logs, note, data loss. Exposure dropped spontaneously, a technical anomaly that no consultant could account for. For psychological context, team members were subjected to field interviews. The responses display a haunting consistency. Memory gaps, recurring vertigo, sense of dread localized to sighting point, intermittent auditory disturbances. No corroboration exists for the auditory phenomena. However, 4 different logs confirm sound absent for 94 seconds preceding anomalous shadow movement. Some investigators posited mass suggestion, yet medical entries reveal individual physiological impacts, including accelerated heart rates and acute hypothermia. Inquiries into cabin anomalies intensify throughout the investigation. One team installed motion tracking cameras outside suspected sites. None recorded any event beyond snow movement and occasional aurora. Analysis of cabin interiors remains ambiguous. Several documented changes, like the appearance of unclassified markings in the frost, missing tools, and signs of rapid temperature decline. A summarized log reads, cabin entry at 2:04. Tools missing. Temperature -51°C. No signs of life. Compass readings shift erratically within a 100-meter radius, and high-frequency radio devices degenerate into static during each scheduled intercept. Checks for magnetic anomalies return null. Investigators note light distortion, possible environmental cause, yet weather records show no extraordinary events. At the height of the investigation, one crucial decision was made: to recover all available logs and retreat. This retreat was never completed. As scheduled, the remaining documents reveal only scattershot final entries. Retreat impossible. Are we alone? Lights no longer visible, and the brief notation, shadow persistent. Ending record. In the aftermath, procedural reviews resurrected more questions than solutions. The investigation's last phase consists of internal memoranda, each progressively more cautious. Terms such as recurrent incident, psychological contamination, and unrecoverable asset dominate the language. Recommendations include further study, relocation of cabin assets, and a final warning: possible risk of residual effect. Dissolve team if subject persists. It remains unclear if this warning was ever followed. Throughout the file, the numerous contradictions, physical gaps, psychological distress, technological failures, accumulate with no definitive conclusion. The theories generated by both official and informal inquiry reveal the case's complexity. No single explanation ever attained consensus. First, the environmental hypothesis contends that the shadows and recurring incidents are the result of localized atmospheric phenomena. Light refraction, blizzard-borne distortion, and persistent cold interacting to play tricks on perception. Proponents cite the unique meteorological conditions of the spur, particularly during the longest freeze, as responsible for producing what seem to be supernatural anomalies. Another group, working from psychological field interviews, argues for a mass hallucination effect brought on by prolonged exposure to isolation, extreme cold, and intermittent darkness. These proponents remark on the consistent onset of psychological symptoms, memory lapses, feelings of dread, repetitive auditory hallucinations, suggesting that the spur, and especially the sighting point, constitutes a natural locus for psychological breakdown. A third theory emerges from unreliable cabin evidence. This group points to the unclassified frost markings and erratic compass readings as indications of magnetic or environmental instability, possibly related to long-abandoned rail technologies or the residual effects of undocumented maintenance experiments. The anomalies in cabin temperature and sporadic reports of interior changes are attributed to the unknown, remnants of early electrical installations. The least supported, but most persistent, theory posits an unknown presencer, shadow entity, referenced obliquely in dispatch notes and personal logs. Proponents note the recurrence of shadow movements at 2:14, the apparent response of wildlife to undetectable stimuli, and the unresolved missing equipment. Eyewitnesses, whose statements remain unverifiable, frequently described a figure at the edge of light, reinforced by photographs that, though unfocused, appear to show fleeting silhouettes. Counter-theories challenge all prior explanations. They mention the lack of definitive physical traces, the rapid erasure of footprints, and the absence of any direct harm or loss. The closing file is marked unfinished. Recommendations are brief: do not return. All further inquiries suspended. In the final memorandum, the author admits no satisfactory conclusion was found. Investigation incomplete. Phenomenon persists, recommending indefinite suspension. Checklists compiled by investigators remain partially filled. Equipment manifests show items missing by the dozen. Team rosters are now blank forma. Members' names crossed out, initialed by unknown hands. All testimony, when reviewed at inquiry's end, converges on the sense of continued unease. Audio logs record silence, punctuated only by the shifting wind. Laboratory analysis, performed months after the fact, finds no explanation for the equipment failures or the apparent distortions in light and shadow. The site remains mapped, but unvisited. The closing file repeats the ambiguity at the heart of case number 29H. Presence may persist. Outcome uncertain. No requests for further study have ever been approved.